3, 2, 1. What's up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of Campus Cuts. I'm your host, Tanaka Tava, and today I have I know I say everybody is a very special guest, but today I have a very important and somebody that is doing some good work. He is somebody that is doing into the world of social media, specifically talking about mental health, our way of our persona and how we show ourselves and how we are even perceived, and this work that is going to be very important for the next 20, 30, 40 years. It is my absolute honor and pleasure to be able to present Mr. Dr. Jonathan Bertrand to the show. Campus Cuts, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I do appreciate it. Glad to just be able to have the platform to speak about this new awareness that's affecting everyone.
Of course, absolutely. So for anybody that is new to Campus Cuts, I just want to be known, Campus Cuts is an intergenerational multicultural show that brings together students, faculty, community members, entrepreneurs, athletes, and entertainers from all walks of life to chop it up in the barbershop, the virtual barbershop. I feel like there's a very important part of how the barbershop has given a community for the African-American men to be able to express and share the world. And I wanted to use this platform and this show as a way to continue to hopefully expose and open to a bunch of people, but make it more thought-provoking, inspirational, and intentional for people just to be able to get a grasp of what's going on. So that is the basis of the show. So of course, I introduced you, your doctor, but I want you to give a quick introduction of yourself. What is your name? What is your occupation? And where are you from?
So my name is Jonathan Bertrand, and I'm from Orlando, Florida. And we've spent the last 11 years, and I say we as a team, but I've spent the last 11 years building what I call the social media awareness industry, and in return done a couple publications nationally on social media dependency disorder. So just building that awareness around the need of being aware online just sparked a new interest in me. Many years ago, I was 15 years old. Didn't really have, much of a, where do I want to be? What do I want to do in the next 10 years? And going on the 11th year of this journey, I've come across a lot of people just dealing with online problems in my own community of Orlando, Florida, and realized that, well, if I can do it here, I can do it anywhere. And then as things unfold in the real world, we see that it's affecting us, not just, our families, our friends, our everyday social cues, but it's also affecting our online relationships that I've realized determine how we operate in the offline world. So, since developing these disorders, these theories, I've realized that, nobody's really breaking it down. Nobody's really, doing what, needs to be done to create the research, the understanding, the terms. And that's what I've been able to do. And, a little fun fact, in certain circles, the how I got doctor of social media was because when I started doing the research, I was actually doing more than some of the doctoral programs that were actually being developed by some of the main Ivy Leagues, of the day. So I've realized that, in the process of developing and working with doctors, developing protocol and treatments, we're ahead of the curve. And now we're trying to just educate people and teach them how to be ahead of the curve too.
Right. That's really, really good. So how did you get started doing this? Or how did you, what was the thing that made you realize, what this is from somebody that wasn't really quite sure of what they wanted to do, and realizing what, I'm going to go try to figure this out and the program and figure out how to continue to have terminology and even prescribe just these terms for a new phenomenon that hasn't really been in existence in the past 20 years. Because I don't think people realize how young the social media infographic really is.
It's real young. And what I started using MySpace October 16th, 2006. So, within the past, 20 years, we grew up into this, and I'm 26 now. So I always let people know that when I started, it was actually because I was getting bullied. So I got bullied in middle school, but, social media wasn't really a thing. We had the top 5, top 10 people on MySpace. For those kids that don't know, that was an actual thing. Where we could rate people. And that actually started full blown, debates and conversations between friends and who was actually important. And I tell people that was like my genesis of, like my deterioration in the online world when I didn't understand, the value of self. And when I got to high school, I'm not going to say the college, I'm not going to say the high school, but the high school that I went to, for those people that do research, you'll know, I used to get bullied. And it got so bad to the point where I had to get Ronald Blocker involved, which was our old superintendent. I had to get student advocates involved because it went from in-person bullying, physical, to online bullying, which people don't realize that was psychological. Right. And I learned I had 2 options. And this is something that I always tell people. When you really sit back and think about this, pull the trigger or create the solution. And not many people have that option to create a solution to a problem that affects kids every day. And I said, well, if you're worried about me, someone who has told you there's a problem, told you that I'm having mental health problems, told you that, I'm being bullied online, and that's out of your jurisdiction because it's out of school territory. Well, for the kids that don't have parents that can't support, for the kids that can't speak up for themselves, for the kids and even parents that want to help but don't know how to differentiate where the problem actually stems from, I said, well, my parents were able to help me. I went to UBC, University Behavioral Center. I did go, but it took me threatening to kill somebody. It took me threatening to hurt myself. And then when I actually went into the facility, they looked at me like I was just a normal person because I had that Joker mentality. I could look you in your face. You would never know anything was wrong. Had pretty decent grades. Was a standout guy, did ROTC. So I was the guy you would never see coming. And I always remind people that it was those years, it taught me that you can be a ghost. Nobody would ever question you, but one day all it takes is one. And that's what made me go, whoa, okay, this will help a lot of people, but this would also answer questions for those people in the new generation that may not know where to look, that may not know what actually is causing these problems, these triggers, these emotions, what's the onset. So just being someone that went through it heavy, I was like, okay, yeah, if they're not going to do it, I'll do it. And it's not for money. It's literally to help people. And I mean, it's been a crazy ride of morals and figuring out, even in that aspect, what is right and what is wrong when you're dealing with people's emotions in the online world.
Right. Because the online world hasn't been regulated. Like this is the first time, like 2020, I think 2020 and 2021 have been the very first time that there has been any idea of regulation, whether it's going to be federal. And of course, we're now entering in a new stage of the internet of DeFi or decentralized land, or just like the, decentralized autonomous networks. And for people who are not privy, please, I'm giving y'all a free game right here. Like, take it up and start researching because we're about to enter into a whole different world, right? So we see that how things have not been regulated. One, because of the lack of education by political figures due to the idea of the standard old world. Two, just not enough research because we're still very, very in the nuanced and nascent stages of all of this evolving and elevating of technology, literally having a computer in your hand at any point in time to search up the world of information, where it's like even maybe too much information, right? So now for a regular person that is getting to understand your work, what are some of the simple things that you do that you can say that are 3 things that you say of like why your work is important?
So just to start out with just anybody, and normally I get contacted by parents, believe it or not, parents or executives that need help with, management of their employees. And I always start with, how does social media affect you? Do you get anxious? Do you get upset when you read something? Are you on social media longer than 2 to 3 hours a day just scrolling? And do you realize a reaction when things don't even pertain to you? And that's where the conversation starts. And like anything, and what people don't realize is that addiction and dependency are two different things. And, you know, I've learned, and, you know, there's always gray areas, but because it's so brand new and it's not defined yet in the DSM, you know, we've realized that with dependency, you know, you're basically, like I've said before many times, it's like crack cocaine. I know that's a heavy word right now, and if I need to be censored for that, that's fine. But, you know, social media is like the new crack cocaine. No, and I've been saying that before these publications this last week have been coming out. I've been saying it since 2015. But for parents, for anybody that's like, what are the top 3? You know, how long have you been on it? Does it affect your mood? And then the last one is, can you stay off it? If you say no, that's a problem. And if it does affect your mood, how is it affecting you? Is it affecting you psychologically? Is it affecting you physically with your hands? I mean, these are the type of things that, you know, when people come to me, those are the top things that they talk about.
Right.
Or their eyes, you know, they're getting eye problems now. So, right. I mean, we're slowly realizing, and people are slowly realizing, the longer I spend online, I'm developing habits that originally weren't there, or normally what would take, you know, 10, 15 years to develop, you know, whether it's chronic, it's literally within a couple weeks. And I've actually seen people go from, you know, I don't use it much, to the moment they get a little bit of fame online, or they figure out the algorithms to get them a little bit more interest to the public, they get hooked. And right. That's the part where I'm like, whoa, you need to chill out, take a deep breath, and remember, you have real life friends, you have a real life family, you got a real life marriage, a real life relationship. You can't negate that for online, you know, presence and that persona, that social media persona. And right. For families that are watching, kids that are watching, adults that are watching, you know, those are just 3 of the signs that are like top of the list for someone like me. If you were to sit down and we were to go about, you know, how is this affecting your social, your public, and your private life? Right. And once you address those things, you'll catch on very quickly on how it will affect you. And it's just, everybody's different. And that's how we do the research. That's how we're understanding these things, because what happens here on the East Coast may be different on the West Coast. What happens in home may be different than what happens in your workspace. So it's all about how you address it and how we plan to kind of move forward in understanding you, the user.
Right. That's a lot of good. That's a great point in being able to determine, and even just showcasing like in 3 simple ways what your work is doing. Mm-hmm. So of course, I mean, I've been very privy, and I've been doing a lot of research because I'm an executive on in a social media company, in a tech company, specifically trying to revitalize and understand how can we curate a more human experience through connection. Mm-hmm. Right. So I think one of the things that we've seen huge social media platforms, specifically Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, is gamify the psychology. Literally, they literally do user research on kids, right? And depending, seeing, okay, how can we put this product right there in order? It's kind of, it's very maniacal if you really think about it, how they've taken just a little tip of, okay, hey, you know what? We're going to take this little square, we're going to put it right over here, and we're going to test how many people are going to react to it. What kind of walls are going to enter it? What kind of product? Okay, what type of product problems that they're going to have? And just specifically also in the sense of, you know, most of the user base right now is now growing outside of millennials, of heavy Gen Z, specifically teenage girls, right? Of course, you know, Facebook finally the Wall Street Journal released the documents of the research that they've done, talking about Instagram causing mental health, eating disorders, body disorders, and just rewiring the mind and programming the mind. What are some of your reactions as a researcher, as somebody who is leading this industry? And what are some of the things that parents people are coming to you about? Like, are they coming to you like, oh my gosh, you knew it, or you were right? Like, oh, we don't need to listen to you. What are some of your thoughts?
Why wasn't this funded 10 years ago when you talked about the same thing? And when I was at Florida A&M posting articles and writing articles on LinkedIn about same thing, how social media causes body dysmorphia, how women are the number one targeted group, and people thought I was just chastising women and whatnot. But in reality, I knew that because I'm speaking with women in the industry, from corporate to personal, who are running these companies or who are, at the forefront of these conversations in the medical field, from MDs to PhDs, and just, but the thing about, when you build from the ground up, for example, and one thing I want to make very clear, we're not Silicon funded. We're not in Silicon Valley. So people need to understand that. We're not backed by the big tech companies, and a lot of these research reports that are being pushed out are literally in-house reports from these tech companies. And, when you go as far as trying to develop something, it's like they said recently, like I've said many times before too, it's just regurgitating. Only difference is, we're not the headline of the headline. So, but they said big tech is having their big tobacco moment. But my generation will understand that if they don't do research. But in the 90s, big tobacco was in a major class lawsuit about how big tobacco was manipulating their products to get people hooked. So in return, they were charged with billions of dollars and had to create funds and campaigns about, tobacco-free campaign. Everybody remembers that back in the early 2000s. Well, that was the result of a lawsuit. So with someone like me, who literally is developing the industry for the awareness, I already knew 10 years ago, when that time comes that social media has their big tobacco moment, they're going to need something like the National Council for Social Media. They're going to need something like Social Media First Aid. They're going to need something like the Social Media Research Institute, non-biased institutions that aren't literally funded by the own companies. It's not integrated between the two. They're none of that. It's funded, independent, separate. And these are the type of things where when you bring it to these companies or when you introduce it to people in certain fields, it's all about bottom line and profit. And these are private, some private, some public, but majority of them are publicly traded companies. So all their concern is the bottom line. We as social media users are the product of their services. Nobody reads terms and conditions. No. And when you read
EULA reports, come on, son.
Yeah,
come on.
Exactly. So when you read the terms and conditions, you realize that there is no such thing as privacy anymore. And I tell people the hard truth. When they contact me and they pay to consult, I'm telling them the truth. There is no such thing as privacy anymore. The moment you opt in, you're no longer private. And it's funny, and I laugh, on social media sometimes because I'm like, people throw around this word private. You can't follow me. No, the moment you create an account, whether it's private or not, all you need is one access code or a screenshot, and now you're no longer a private person. So it's just, and sorry for the rant, but it's just one of those things where it's like, I get contacted so much. And I know so many people. I know some of the reporters that actually write these articles in the Wall Street Journal, MSNBC, Arab News overseas. Like these reporters are watching what I do very closely, but they make articles like that, which they already know the person that's done it is a small time guy in Orlando, Florida, that has no Silicon Valley connects, but all they have to do is literally write one article about social media awareness and boom, there goes the solution. But you have the solution too quickly. Everybody gets nervous. So it's going to take time, but eventually, it's going to be a global conversation and a mainstream conversation. We're just in the background building, and they'll see.
It is now starting to become a global situation because we have seen how WhatsApp has been used and manipulated by the Taliban. We are seeing now how back in 2018, if somebody doesn't know, how Instagram was solicited, it was using as a way for people to do, sexual slavery, modern day human trafficking, organs, people cutting off I know it's this is like some people would think this is like 4chan. This is 8chan stuff, Reddit, like early Reddit stuff. But no, but this is happening on the major platforms. It's just so crazy to see how they mastered your algorithm, depending on who you follow, where you don't even come across this stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's so crazy because, and also like I want you to go deeper into like what the social media persona is.
Okay.
Because whenever we have our social media, whatever, like, right, like, TikTok's algorithm is very powerful, and it only shows you the content that you are either producing or that you like and favorite, and it doesn't even take you to the whole, like, the world is so big, but they try to make it so small, and you're only thinking about these things, so you have to be these things. Like,
Exactly.
Whoa.
Yeah, no, you're right. And just to kind of like go in on the persona part, one of my favorite quotes that I always say, and I created this back in like 2014, one post can change the mind, one comment can change generation. But one thing I never mentioned is that who's really controlling the post. And what people don't realize is that, we may press send, we may type it out, but at the end of the day, what type of information are we being fed that makes us want to post a certain thing? And on top of that, when it comes to algorithms and information, remember, the whole point of these big tech companies is to get our attention and to build growth. So the more conversation we have, it's controversial. And yes, when they said that the Taliban use WhatsApp to build their campaign and take over the whole country weeks beforehand, I'm like, that is how powerful social media could be used. But one of the biggest arguments of the big tech companies at that time was, well, we don't have interpreters for that country. But yeah, we don't have interpreters for that country because they speak different dialects. See, but that's the thing where, there's no regulation. There's nothing in place to say, well, if you're in that country, this is what needs to be done, or this is the regulation of this country. And it could just be basic stuff like, moderators. You could have moderators for the languages. So if these are the languages that they speak, write, or message, or whatever, create content for, even if it's one or two people in the country, it doesn't matter. Just have somebody that can actually filter. But when you have algorithms filtering, human generated conversation, algorithms are computers. They're out computers. So it means if you put a code in, it's just going to worry about that code and nothing else. They don't know morality. They don't know if you're right or wrong. That's not their duty. Their duty is to just negate you to a certain conversation and then build the data behind it to be sold. And that's what people don't realize. And that's how countries can be taken over. That's how elections could be won. And if you don't know anything about the last two elections, Obama told us he used social media. Trump came in and said, well, yeah, I'm going to manipulate this all the way because I'm a celebrity and I could use it. And he told us what we want.
Obama took one of the co-founders of Facebook, Chris Hughes.
Yeah. I mean, so we're looking at the reality right in front of us, but you got people like me who are like, it's here, it's happening. But because, propaganda, business interests, it gets very political when you get to a certain stage. And I understood that in an early age. So all I had to do was just like, well, okay, I may miss the Obama administration, miss the Trump administration, which, not gonna lie, this would have been perfect for him because he could have ran with this all the way, could have helped him out a little bit, but whoever's next, who knows? But now we know it's gonna be a conversation. And then when you got the Surgeon General of the United States coming out and saying, yes, social media, creates mental health issues. I'm sitting here in Florida like, hey, how do you even get in touch with someone like that other than social media? So I'm using LinkedIn, I'm using Twitter, and I'm like, why do I have to go to these channels to get their attention when I should just be able to send an email with a solution or saying, hey, let's partner, let's introduce this on a national level. But this is beyond certain people's comprehension because they're not coming from a millennial standpoint. They're coming from he needs a PhD. He needs to have this. He needs to have that. But you realize half the people that create the solutions don't have any of that.
Right.
But, policy and procedure. So it's just, man, it is deep. But people need to hear the truth and it's going to hit them. But they call me when they lose their job, when they lose a family member, when their job tanks, or when their company loses a couple $1 billion. Then they call.
How does that make you feel? Like these companies calling you once?
How does it make me feel? I mean, well, the benefit about social media is that you can actually see who follows you and who watches your stuff. So when I know you're watching and I know you're the executive that can pull that plug and say, we want this, it makes me go, well, the price just went up. What could have been an easy conversation, like what we're having, is now, well, that's going to cost you, because now I got to come in and do damage control, and I got to figure out a solution for something that still is so far ahead of the curve. Nobody really knows that this is even happening. But because you lost money, now you realize you need the awareness. Now you realize the personas come into play. Now you realize, oh, well, let me decide what persona is the dominant persona that I'm, that's targeting me. Is it the public? Oh, the public side is like Nike, for example. They needed the social media side and they used that to their advantage. But on the back end, you had other companies in the public, their public persona was just trash.
Right.
So it's like privately, yeah, they want to do good, but then when you unravel their purpose, are they genuine or are they not? So these are all the things. Oh, let's not talk about marketing. I mean, this is marketing in a sense. Only difference is I don't call myself a marketing guru like half the people on social media with about 30, 40,000 to a couple million followers. But nobody ever questions, what are your credentials? What have you done?
Right.
So when I hit them with the research papers, when I hit them with the university partnerships, when I hit them with the international references, I mean, these are all there. You've seen it. You've watched me for years. And I'm like, what else needs to be done? So I just said, let things happen as they must. They'll find me.
They'll find you. But now, as we continuing to move more into a world that is going to continue to be, it's funny because most people say, okay, yeah, we're moving more Black Mirror-y, but honestly, if you want to see what's really going to happen, just look at China and Japan. See how they're already in the third level of industrial revolution, but like more of the technological revolution. And we're seeing how they utilize artificial intelligence for robots and its way for more efficient and more cost effective and more making more things more, faster and all that stuff. Like, we're moving into it's only a matter of time until like the US is like this. So like, what ways do you think some solutions we can continue to create to hopefully make sure that people's lives are not taken over by this? I mean, like, I'm sorry. Well, let me ask this.
No, you're fine.
Do you think could there be a world without social media ever again?
Oh, it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. It's integrated. It's here. It's worse than what we thought, but we are coming from an American mentality, and I've been overseas, so I know exactly the difference between like a Brazilian mentality, because I've been there, or Canadian mentality overseas, the third world countries. The perspective is split because it's not a priority there. Yeah, it's there, but here we're the catalyst. We're literally the example of what not to be in the social media world, because we create the content. We create the biggest, monetary gains for people dependent on social media, where they're giving out influencer passports. That was an article that I read recently in Forbes, where they're literally giving visas to people to live in countries, to develop content in that country, a work visa, and then they're going back. I mean, that's a job now. That's a legal job. So it's here to stay. And yes, by the way, China, yeah, they're actually way ahead of the curve. And it's funny because when I'm getting contacted by people overseas, the first thing they reference is a, government that is, if I believe they're a dictatorship, China, if I last time recalled. So I'm sitting here like, well, why is my work, basically similar to what they're doing? But only difference is they're putting people in what they call social media academies. They're putting people in camps for their dependency of social media. It's not a thing there yet, but I, as an American, am thinking like, whoa, as I develop these councils, these facilities, these institutions, these clinics, I'm sitting here like, I don't want it to be like where they have to physically go to a facility to get help, but that's where it's going. And right. I had to sit myself down and say, whoa, this is where it's going to get. Only difference is we're a democracy. So we're not forcing you, taking you from your home and saying you're going to go into a facility because you're spending too many hours, because we can monitor you, because we can see your usage and we know exactly where your IP address is. We know every single account you have. We got all your facial recognition photos. So
financial information. But I mean, but the thing is though, like, I think that is already happening, and like the democracy, the democratic principles of the U.S. is starting to decline due to COVID-19, and it is becoming, because since China is having such a pull economically, right? And of course, the United States is trying to compete it, but then they have this debt problem. It's like it's one of the other, because again with DeFi, the central bank is like, man, it's just like, America's like, oh yeah, we're America, we're great, but honestly, they're very similar. They're very, very similar. It's just more of a matter of time of who's going to buckle down to who. And of course, like, I really see a world where it's not even the governments that are going to control anything. Like it's these technocracies. David Icke, right? David Icke's been talking about this for the past 10 years. And everybody thought he was crazy. But who we literally have Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, and Google literally donating money, or not even donating, but funding countries. Talking about, you don't need to go to college anymore. Just get a Google certificate so you can come work for us. You don't need this, that, and the third. The Facebook Libra cryptocurrency, where they're like, oh, no. But even Zuckerberg, him going to court, like, say, hey, if we don't do this, China's going to win. Which, in my opinion, I think they've won. Sorry, not sorry.
No, I mean, like I said, they're ahead of the curve. And actually, if you look at one of my most recent posts, if you actually look, and this is how subliminal I am, I literally show you who is like under me when it comes to like the 1, 2, 3 for dependency in the world. And if you look very closely, if I recall, it's Japan and then China. But literally, like, it's public knowledge, so it's not like it's a secret. Everything I'm saying, you can Google, you can search these national trademark offices, you can search the copyright offices. They're there, but people don't know where to look because we're not taught it. And like you said, the difference between the European mindset, the Asian Pacific mindset, one thing I've learned, they're researching like crazy. And I know multiple researchers out there who are like, no, in our education system, we're taught how to research correctly, to look at the correct sources and everything else. But here in America, we just take it off face value, where I can assure you, if I had 1 million followers right now, I would be on every single news station in the world talking about this stuff. But because I don't, I'm looked at as just some normal person, but they don't realize that a lot of these people I've already talked to. I know them probably very well, but it's what you're willing to believe. And that's the part about perception. And that's the thing about, Sigmund Freud. I can't remember his nephew, but his nephew was one of the creators of propaganda for the war. And
Edward Bernays.
There you go. Yes. He was one of the creators of propaganda, known for it. But what people don't know is that his uncle was the one, that created, the analysis, the psychoanalysis. So, in my research, I said, like any researcher, we update the research to modern day. Well, nobody's doing a cyber psychoanalysis. So while we're studying the persona, we're also doing a cyber psychoanalysis, which eventually, once we determine through the cyber psychoanalysis someone's dependency level, okay, now we need to introduce them to the awareness. And that right there is a multi-trillion-dollar, billion-dollar business in itself. But are people going to believe it until it happens? But by that time, it's going to be too late. And my thing is I'd rather the US be ahead of the curve. But if they can get out of their own way, you got companies like Europe over here. I'm doing documentaries in England, but why do I have to do it there when I can do it here? It's the same content, same material. Only difference is it's European talking about it. So it's all about priority. And if America can put, social media as a priority to target, I can assure you, cybersecurity, mental and behavioral health, research, education, the next generation will be more mentally sound than our generation, who's used and abused by it and, used as a consumer-based type, thing.
Yeah. That's so good, and especially like I think it things for me where like I mean for me where it got really dystopian was
Mhm.
when the OnlyFans situation. I
Oh,
believe I'll say this. I will say the only reason why I'm a big fan of OnlyFans, not in
mhm.
terms of the content, whatever it
Yeah,
is
of
produced,
course.
because of course there's a lot of sexual trafficking, people
Mhm.
posting like devious, evil content, but they've mastered and they've been able to execute and execute at a high level of the perfect, absolute perfect and empowering business model. Like literally giving 80% to their consumers or to the customers, to the people, to the patrons, and then after that, they only keep 20% of the royalty or whatever they get. Right? Literally, that's what even Kanye even talked about on Joe Rogan about. Hey, you know what? Maybe United Ambassadors can do something very similar for the music industry because you know it's very pervasive. It's always kind of built on that same venture capitalist like societal
Yeah.
hierarchy. But but then again, after that happened though, when even talking about like them cutting off the plug in order to continue to appeal more to what mainstream investors in order to get funding, even though at a valuation that was way lower than it actually was.
Yeah.
That I think that's where it just got real because like people were talking about stories. This is my only source of income, or I don't know what I'm going to do, or I don't know what's going to happen. And we're literally seeing what the divide of the middle class is eradicating. We're
Mhm.
seeing that more people are falling due to the pandemic and due to hard times. And the people that are getting richer are the people that happen to be the owners of these platforms
Yeah.
or people involved within creating and helping these platforms stay up and afloat. And
Mhm.
it's just like, yo, this is some Hunger Games type stuff right
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. I mean, and if you're, and my whole thing is if you're not creating it, you're a part of it. I mean, there is no in between. And I know that's harsh for some people to believe, like, oh, I can never be controlled. But, I mean, no, I've heard it. Like, I mean, and there's some strong people that I know, but they fall prey to, posting to social media. They will never tell their friends anything, but they'll go straight to social media and tell them. And that's the thing where it's like, where's that fine line of, like you said, privacy? Because at the end of the day, if you're not building it, you don't own it. You're a product of their services, and all they're doing is just collecting data. And people don't realize that, like before us, data is what gets people involved. Data is what's kind of fine tunes how to direct someone and channel them to do something that you want them to do. Everything that this generation is doing is not our own will. There is no such thing as free will in the online world. And
No,
yes, that will be controversial. Yes, someone will
no,
say, "What do you mean?" But
no,
no, like there is no free will. There is no free will.
no, absolutely. There's not because yeah, you're absolutely right. There's no free will. It is. I think it's very scary for people to say that, but of course, that's why you got Dorsey trying to say, you know what? Maybe there needs to be like he's trying to have two versions of Twitter. One, the one that's already up with moderation, but then the wild wild west, decentralized blue sky one, which I think is a great idea. But also at the same time, though, why should we trust Dorsey? Because I mean, like, man already made his billions. You know what I'm saying? And had to, and Twitter had to pay like a nearly $1 billion to investors because they lied about their number.
Yeah, well, see, but the thing is though, once, okay, so like once you get to a certain point in any business, as they're stakeholders, they're publicly traded companies. So he's just the figurehead of the company because everybody knows him. Like Zuckerberg, the day he leaves, their stock will probably drop, like tremendously because he's the guy that built it. He's the guy that is the
And who
figurehead.
owns the majority of the company voting
Yeah.
rights? So
Yeah, I mean, but that's like sorry, that's like Jeff Bezos. I think he said he owned like 14% of Amazon. But you
11%.
realize, it's like, okay, well, people thought he was the decision maker, but at the end of the day, he's just the spokesperson because he sold majority of the shares, and people don't do the research on that part to see who actually owns these companies. And sometimes governments actually do buy into companies and say, hey, we'll buy 30% of your company to get the seed money going because we're big data. Like that's literally that's all they are, big data. And being someone that understands that, who have been to those levels and have watched and made public who I'm actually meeting at these levels. I mean, people just like to people, some people don't take photos for just clout. Some people actually take photos because they're like, this is a message to where things are going to be going. And this was what, in 2016, I met the chairman of the board of Microsoft and John Thompson. I believe he was one of the most powerful Black chairmen in the world running Microsoft. So, I mean, right there, the whole conversation changed when it came to what I was doing just off of a photo. Nobody said, what are you doing with them? Nobody said, why were you meeting? They just said, whoa, that's the chairman of Microsoft. How'd you get that meeting? But people don't realize that a year before that, I had a photo, I had a booklet of him at Florida A&M, and I said, in a year or time, I'm going to meet John Thompson through social media or because of social media awareness. And within 10 months, it happened. But people don't realize is that, what you post online, it's a manifestation of your subconscious.
No, really, yes.
And people don't realize that you're telling on yourself without you even realizing it, because now it's become so ingrained in our everyday life, from visuals, mental stimulation, sexual stimulation. You don't even need to be touched now, and you already stimulated. So what is normally taking years to develop through communication, physical touch, whatever, is now streamlined by like a OnlyFans, because now you're doing stuff you ain't never did before, because it's incentives, it's money, it's a livelihood. If I don't do this, what's going to happen? What are my friends going to think? Right. So it comes down to all that.
Or I'm doing this. What's going to happen? What my job's going to think? I'm going to get kicked out.
There have been
like the nurse up in New York during the times where she wasn't like, she's like, I'm going to make some supplemental income. I'm going to do that. When somebody found her, she got snitched, and after that, boom, huh?
See, but let's not forget though, there was another one. There was this teacher who worked at a Catholic school, and she was making $6 figures every month. $6 figures every month. That's over $100,000. Over the course of that's what over what? Oh, gee, my math right now. Is that 1.2 million a year, something like that? Oh, gee, yeah. 1.2 million a year off of OnlyFans, which people don't realize that's residual if you still have the same amount of subscribers. So for people that are, like never used to doing that, they're exploring new areas, non-conservative things that normally would never be talked about in their household. But when you're bringing in the bacon like that, I mean, it's tempting. But that's the kind of avenue and things that we need to be aware about. We need to be aware of that as we adapt. Things, policies need to change. Awareness needs to change. Section 230, I believe it's called, hasn't been updated in 21 years. So these are the type of things where now Facebook's doing ads about it, about, there needs to be change, but they're not giving any solution. So someone like me is sitting watching them on Hulu commercials, like awareness, that's all you need. You don't need to make it complicated, but that will come.
Wow. This is good, man. This is because, again, your work is definitely, I think your work is important. That's why I brought you on, and hopefully, it's just one of those things. Because if somebody was to have this conversation 5 years ago, they'll be looked at as crazy or a conspiratorial.
Yeah, that's how it was.
Yeah, but I mean, but look, see, this is what happens here. It was a visionary, somebody that has, foresight and mindsight, and then now doing the eyesight and bringing it into life. Mm-hmm. It is. Are you worried about what's going to, do you have any form of not anxiety, but are you nervous of what's going to happen if this doesn't get, taken care of, or do you have insights of what's going to happen in the next 5-10?
Well, I mean, when it comes to that, I wouldn't say I'm not nervous. Never was. I think it's more so I just preparing myself. So when it does, honestly, that's what gives me anxiety. Is like, whoa, when this hits, it's like, as I see reports, as I see lobbyists, as I see presidents across the world talk about it, I'm like, oh man, once I get the phone call, it's like, this ain't just no casual conversation. This is multi-generational. This is multi-industry. This is multi-government. Top secret clearances on every level you could think of. I mean, I don't know if they even have one for what we're doing yet. I mean, because they don't, because they would have done it already. But it's this is modern warfare for the average everyday person. where, you know, they change whole governments over and I keep saying propaganda, but over misinformation. So
nah, but it's propaganda. Media is propaganda. I don't care who you are. It's the most powerful form. It's the most powerful form. It is like psychological, you know, psychological operations.
Ooh,
it is the most powerful. You know,
okay. I don't want to go too deep now, but you went there. Psychops. Yes.
No, bro, no, dude, I'm deep because you see. You gotta wake him up, bro. It's literally the Matrix, no cap.
No. But seriously, that's a perfect segue right there. It's the Matrix. Do you take the red pill or the blue pill? Well, people don't realize, and I think if you mix the two colors, it's green, if I'm correct. But like people don't realize that's where you go. You go reality or, you know, your reality. And when you mix the two, you lose identity of self. And that's how I made that social media persona. And this is like the irony of it all. If you understand what I'm telling you right now, there's public, there's private. That's what we're used to. W.E.B. Du Bois had what he called the mask theory, the veil theory. And he talks about African Americans in private and African Americans in public. And when he went to Frisk, how he felt as an African American in a white dominated world. And it's one of those things where our veil is social media. Only difference is people can't see the face behind the veil once it's lifted, because now you have that middle veil is social media. But the only difference is with social media, you have multiple personalities for every single profile that you develop. And sometimes you can have multiple personalities, multiple profiles for the same thing that you're developing. And you don't even realize it, that the way you use the account for family is different how you use it for business. So when you're constantly interchanging these personas, eventually you morph into a whole new person and it affects you. And that's what we saw on a national level, international level, from military to war. And yes, that's what the government does do. They go into other countries. They disseminate information to sway elections. Well, guess what happened here? It was public. Nobody had to pay for that. Nobody had to go out and say, you need to do this and this is what it is. They just posted about it and got people triggered and riled up. And then January 6th comes and now they're storming capitals. So I'm sitting here like, well, I talked about this on an English podcast 2 weeks before. Ironically. And they're in England joking about us Americans, about how we're dependent and how, some crazy stuff could happen before he leaves office. And then it happens. And then they call me and say, well, you were right. And I'm like, yeah, that's why I have to go overseas.
And then but also the same thing happened in Europe and the UK when there was an anti-vax, and then after that people pulled up, think it's the BBC, but it's a completely different. They end up busting up through like a show, like a recording for a show, and it wasn't even to belong to the BBC or anything like that. And people look stupid, people look dumb, but.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I want a disclaimer. I do not think that I am better because, of course, I have fallen victim to this. Of course, and I think everyone has to some degree or to some extent. And it is true because why? Because there is there's a reason there's the Instagram that everybody wants to show, and then there's the Finsta. Right. I'm not sure if everybody, a great book that goes deeper, a deep diver is by Sarah Fryer, No Filter, the story of Instagram and how that really picked up in 2015. Right. Mm-hmm. Like the idea of the Finsta having a private story. And that is why, Snapchat was doing so well, because Snapchat was more intimate. And then, of course, the story was more public. And then after that, Instagram's like, everybody's going, let's take these stories. Boom. And after that, it's cut Snapchat's decline, like Snapchat's revenue and all that stuff. But it's like, damn. And so now all these it really does sound like all these multiple split personalities or personas. It sounds like something like that's very similar to, I don't want to say similar to, but when a person thinks about like a multiple personality disorder, or it really it's so wild. How is there any research of that? Like, people actually coming up and developing multiple personality disorder depending on their so many different social media accounts?
So, okay, so we just did a white paper with Jonathan Wicks. He's a clinical researcher out in California. And basically, through his understanding and research, he was able to figure out that, I mean, of course, there's no real numbers yet because it's still brand new. There's no such thing as a disorder, in the DSM. So all these different things we're trying to develop and figure out, like, what is the threshold? How do we even get down to that point of understanding, what triggers someone to develop a dependency or, other type of mental illness towards it. So we're trying to get to that. And that's the whole beauty of these type of conversations. It takes funding, by the way, just so people know. It takes funding and partnerships.
Yeah. This is really good. This has been really good. Of course, as you want to be respectful of time, and I want to make sure that there's an hour. So, last questions. You really think your thoughts about what's going on in the world. Because a lot has happened. So my first question to you, and these legacy questions is, what would you like social media awareness to be in the next 50 years?
I would like social media awareness to be a global conversation amongst not just the users, but corporate and personal users. Basically a global conversation, mainstream commercials, advertising, basically in your face. This is what post responsibly campaigns. We did that in 2015, so we know it can be done. It's just making sure that people understand that there is a platform out there. There are people, there are companies that are, advocating this on a bigger scale than just a social media post. So yeah, within the next 5 to 10 years, that's my goal, is to get social media awareness to where it shouldn't be if, and, or but, maybe so, what is it? Nah, it's spelled out in your face. It's there. Kids are, actively saying, no, I'm aware of what social media does to me. Post responsibly. Have you seen what you posted? No, that's affecting your mental health. Don't do that. I can determine when someone's having a mental breakdown on social media, and I can break that barrier of communication so for them to open up. That's what social media awareness to me would, be all the while. That would make it worth it to me after all these years, is to see kids say, yes, I identify, I can address it. I'll spread the message of social media awareness to somebody else.
Right. That's good. Without
us having to tell you.
Right. That's good. My second to last question is, what are 3 things that you would tell to your 18-year-old self?
Don't give up. Don't give up. It's actually going to happen. It's going to happen. And then this is bigger than me. This is bigger than me. This is my legacy. And, when I leave this great earth, I don't want my Instagram or my Facebook to be the reason why people remember me. I want them to be like, he actually developed something that impacted, billions of people, multi-generational, and he built people around it that were actually there to help and actually believe in a cause bigger than just, creating a solution and then collecting a check from Silicon Valley. It's not about becoming a billionaire or multimillionaire. It's about impact. I want to say I impacted 1 million people per year, after the first 5 years of this thing going, full-fledged, and then saying, I want to touch 1 billion people through social media awareness. That right there would be like my highlight of what we can do and how I want to be remembered.
Wow. Praise be to the Most High, man. That is amazing. That is super amazing. This is a segment where it's called the Speak Life segment. I'm a believer, and I believe that speaking life to people and sharing and giving them the flowers while they're here is super important, because, why give you flowers when you're dead? So, Mr. Jonathan Bertrand, I just want to say first and foremost, thank you so much for doing the good, hard work, because this is not easy. And there's a lot of challenges, especially in an industry that is predominantly white, in an industry that does, lock up and block people to know do with finances and funding because of friends just giving money to friends and not trying to block out people that are actually trying to do good stuff. I just want to say thank you so much for your resilience, and thank you so much for just continuing to share and spread this message and to help people, because this is something that it's the new plague, and it is the new virus that is affecting people's minds and hearts and souls and how they continue to operate in the world. world. And you doing and taking care of creating a multi-billion, multi-trillion industry, and with your team of your researchers and actually helping them and continue to establish systems in this way for people, for families to be able to stay connected again, and to really show like, hey, there's something bigger than the life that you have on the screen, bro. It is so amazing in a world that is so not contrarian. It's just so unconventional, man. And I just want to say thank you again. Thank you so much for taking the time and your energy and your wisdom in order to continue to share this. I'm so grateful for who you are and what you're doing. And I want to continue to say nothing but blessings, nothing but love for you to continue to do the good work. Thank you so much. And I'm so grateful for you, bro.
Thank you very much for having me. And like I said, the goal is to always just enlighten people, and knowing that on this platform, as long as one person calls you and says, hey, you know, I'm aware now, or hey, I'm going to do more research so I can help my kid overcome depression and suicide, or my marriage, or my relationship. That's more worth it to me than any dollar amount, because you can't put a dollar amount to saving a life. You can't put a dollar amount to helping someone overcome something that normally they couldn't. So that's the goal. So thank you very much.
Of course, of course. Any last words? Last words for you? Would you like? What's your social? I guess with that, it's all contrary. Where can the people find you?
Okay. So you can find me on Instagram at Jonathan in Bertrand. So JONATHAN in as in Nancy, BERTRAND. And you type that whole thing out, and you can see it will come up. And if you type in Doctor of Social Media on Instagram, you'll see it come up as well. And you can check us out there. And we're currently building out some of our websites. Eventually, you'll be able to type in socialmediaawareness.org or socialmediaresearchcorp.com. And you'll be able to get that information. And, you know, we're rebranding everything, but it's going to look very nice and definitely up to par. So we're able to handle the load of requests and, you know, get you guys squared away. So that's how you can also, you know, reach out to us. And we have some new numbers on there that you can contact us. And if you want to call in and let us know, I'll provide that number as well to him, so he's able to look at it. Can't remember off the top of my head right now, but definitely we'll be able to speak. And if you need any help, please reach out, because we're here. Thank you.
All right, y'all. You know what it is. Thank you so much for taking the time. Peace out to the audience. Hope you enjoy this episode, and we are out.